Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Justin. What a pleasure it is to be on this wonderful channel.
I'm really glad to have you today because it's an interesting conversation that I think we can have, because there's not a lot of people that can put these types of experiences into a visual format. And your work is really fascinating. That's kind of what drew us to having a conversation with you. But let's talk about you first. Were you always an artist? How long have you been painting?
I literally started painting after my NDE. It was something that was given as a gift, I think, from the other side. But going back in my childhood, I think I was always very rebellious and very much against the way they tried to program us at school, at universities. I always had this deeper knowing that it wasn't the right way, how we should be learning about this realm. It was a totally different way of being. I always felt that. I didn't understand why there was war and why people hated each other, and, you know, from different countries to different cultures and colors and continents. It was something that I always possibly brought with me into this realm, into this life, that I felt that way. So school was really hard for me. I wasn't good at it. I didn't like maths. I didn't like science. I didn't like my teachers. I remember always wondering why the students would talk to their teachers as if they were, you know, higher than them or in a more authoritarian role than them, because I always felt very equal with the teachers. I would always speak to them as if I was a teacher speaking to them as a normal person, you know, from one person to another. And I think they probably felt that I was quite arrogant. But what I actually was just being truly authentic and speaking to them as another human being. And I always felt that since I was a child. So life was really difficult for me growing up in school. Yeah. And then, of course, I never wanted to go to university, because I'm not about to waste another few years in a program, whatever it might be, to be institutionalized and go into different areas, whether it's science or maths or whatever job you get after university. I just knew it wouldn't make sense, and I needed to learn my way. And my way was to literally have an enormous breakup with my first time boyfriend when I was 19. And it really shook me to the core that I said, right, I opened up the fake Atlas book. I say it's fake because that's another story. I opened it up, closed my eyes, and the pin landed right on, should I say Israel or Palestine? Let's just say the Middle East, okay? Because we don't want to get tensions flying there, because we know the situation. So I put my pin on there, and I landed right on there. And I said, right, well, I suppose I have to go there. And that's really where my journey started, to find out about who we are. Why does religion create such division? It was something I always wanted to find out. Why are people at war with one another in the most ridiculous ways? You know, it never made sense to me. And so I traveled the world, and I really went to lots of countries where there was a lot of fighting and war. I went to Israel, Palestine. I went to Lebanon. I lived in Beirut for many years. I went to Dubai. I lived in Africa. I went from country to country. I traveled all over Europe, lived with criminals in Sicily, mafiosos, to USA. I also experienced quite interesting accounts of my life there. And it was just a life experience that I learned. My university was life. That's what my university was.
So I'm going to assume you finished university, and then you have this NDE.
I finished university called Life, which is traveling the world. And I went through a lot. I lived in Africa, and after that I came back to the UK and decided that I was fed up of men. I no longer wanted to have any more relationships, and I would become a nun. And now that's very serious. I really wanted to go towards more of a spiritual calling, to become a nun. And then I looked at myself up and down, and I thought, let's just be real. Maybe you just help the elderly, and let's start there. So I was about to get a job working with the elderly, And at the same time, I was friends with a guy online who I'd met on MySpace many years ago. And we became friends. And he said, listen, before you go and start and work at the elderly home in the UK and have a very normal life, something I avoided my entire life, he said, why don't you come to Greece and visit me? And I thought, what voice should I follow? Should I follow the voice of highest inspiration and joy and say, yes, let me go to Greece? Or should I work as a carer? Something inside of me just said, follow the voice of the joy of the highest calling. And I went to Greece and I never looked back. We ended up getting married and it was a wonderful, wonderful relationship. It still is after 12 years. And while we were together, that's when I had a near-death experience in 2015. And that's really where my whole life turned upside down and where I was never the same person again after that. Before that, I was really quite an exciting, living on the edge, full of drama type of girl. And the NDE started where I was 4 months pregnant. And I was 39 at the time. I was really excited to have my first child, even though I knew I was quite old at that time already. But at the same time, full of joy, you know. But unfortunately, that day was a very strange day. I had suddenly felt really unwell, and my husband, who's a doctor, said, listen, we need to go to the hospital and check you out, see what's going on. And so we went to the hospital and I had some scans, and tragically I lost the baby. The baby had died. And the doctors were immediately saying, listen, you need to have that removed as soon as possible. You need to have your baby removed because you're going to get seriously ill or die. So I was wheeled into the hospital room, lying on the bed. They were preparing me. Everything was, you know, going according to plan. I was very upset, depressed. You know, it wasn't something I was really looking forward to. I just thought I was going to start my life with a child. Anyway, they injected me with, it was a type of anesthesia. And as soon as they injected me, immediately the monitors started going sky high. My blood pressure went from 0 to 100. It just went sky high. My heart rate immediately increased, and they all started to panic. And as a patient lying in the bed, that's not a pleasant experience. You suddenly fill with anxiety. And as I was looking at this, I was like, I was gone, and I was sucked out of my body into this incredible luminous blue-white light. And you'd think that I would have been full of fear and just shocked. But no, I wasn't. I was like, oh, I know this place. I remember this feeling. I remember this feeling and this light. And as I was sucked deeper and deeper into this blue-white light, I was led into an illuminated white, enormous white room with 2 marble thrones in front of me. Now, these thrones were possibly something out of the Tartarian times. I don't know. They were massive, huge, 50 meters high, massive for giants. And there on the thrones, I stood there in awe, and I saw this ancient being that looked like from an ancient eternal tribe with feathered hair. Every single hair follicle were feathers, beautiful, glorious feathers in purples, blues, whites, indigo colors. And this being had the most incredible, powerful, beautiful indigo eyes. I remember the color because who has indigo eyes in this realm? And they were enormous, and they had fish tails sitting on the thrones. It was really bizarre, and blue skin. And, I was looking at them, and they instantly telepathically said to me, everything's fine. You're home. And suddenly all that knowledge of the life here in this realm disappeared. And all the knowledge that we are, who we are, what we are on the other side returned to me. And I knew where I was. I was back with my soul tribe. I was back in the real world, back home. And they said to me, listen, you're not supposed to have children. Don't worry. release the fear. You're not supposed to have children in your earthly life. So release the fear. And my body was just releasing the fear in that moment, and releasing the guilt and the shame and everything else that comes with it when a woman loses her child. And they told me that I needed to stay calm, that I needed to relax. And of course, I just went with it. I felt so beautiful. I felt so much at home, and I was so much filled with the deepest joy and the deepest peace. And they showed me images. They showed me many images, like a film that you press on fast forward, like on an old tape recorder from the 80s, you know, fast forward of different scenes playing out on our earth. And I understood all that. I was like, okay, I must remember that. Okay, yeah. And I was doing all of that. And in that moment, as I was trying to remember as much as I could, I was sucked right out of that experience, back into my body, on the bed, next to this awful Austrian nurse. I gripped hold of her hand and I said, oh my God, do you know where I've just been? This place? This. And she immediately shook off my hand and told me, you know, get off, you know, which is bizarre for a nurse, actually, in her Austrian accent. And immediately I felt the heaviness and the anger and the fear of this realm, you know, coming from her. It was an immediate wake-up call for me of where I was. It's really interesting because all of that doesn't exist in this world where we go to. And next to me, luckily enough, my husband was. And I was speaking to him and telling him about where I've just been and what they've just told me and everything. And there's one thing that I always forget to say. In front of me, there was on the desk where the people wake up, you know, there was a light, a triangular light that glowed in different colors. And I remember when I just before I said, you know, threw the nurse's hand away, I looked at that and I thought I was still there, because that pulsing light with bright colors in this huge triangle shape, which, you know, one of those sand lights. And I had to kind of like realize that I was there because my husband was next to me and I was telling him everything. But what I later realized, as he told me, that I was speaking a fluent language, which sounded extremely ancient. It sounded words like ka, and it sounded almost dolphin high frequencies, like really high tone that you can't even, you'll break your voice if you do it. And then go into low tones and mid tones and high tones, and just flowing up and down with my voice and speaking in this language to my husband. That lasted at least 10 minutes. And I wished he would have recorded it back then, but sadly he didn't. But it's really lovely to verify, you know, because he's a doctor. And I often ask him, you know, please just tell me, how does it sound? Just pretend you're still there and redo the voice. And he said, I can't. The pitches are really weird. And, you know, but it was a fluent language, and it was an ancient language that I spoke to him, a language I now in hindsight feel and know that comes from that side where we're all fluently using frequency. We are not using languages that in this realm divide us. We're using pure unconditional frequency to communicate with one another. I love that bird that's like coming through now. Do you hear that? It's like everything is done for a reason. It's a frequency coming out from the natural world. These old frequencies, and it's, you know, there could have been a bit of that in there as well. Interesting.
How? Yeah, there may be other birds at some point today.
Beautiful.
The way this is going. Um, First, I'm sorry for the loss at that time. Um, how long after the near death experience did your husband see you that you were speaking this language?
It was literally as I woke up, literally as I came to it, and I told him, I've just been to a world that's more real than this world. And I told him everything. And he's actually had, as a doctor, he's had experiences with this. He's had patients who have had near-death experiences, and he himself has had a near-death experience. So it wasn't new for him to experience something like that. His experience is totally different to mine, yet almost identical in understanding, in frequency, in color, and what he saw. So yeah, so we both resonated in that, and it was very, very, very quickly. As soon as I woke up, I spoke that language fluently. Yeah.
Hmm. That's an interesting. I've
No,
not
neither
heard
have
that
I.
before. You know, we hear NDEs where
You know,
people are blind and can see, right? But to speak, to bring something back with you, I think everyone probably does in a certain sense, but not that
I
directly.
think everybody brings something when they have an NDE. Everybody brings a gift with them back into this realm, and I think it's really important for us to discover what that gift is. It could be as simple as being more loving towards another person. You know, I think your heart gets cracked open even wider after an NDE, and things that used to annoy you just don't anymore. All of that seems just superficial nonsense. I think you're more interested in making this life important. You're more interested in making every single moment of the here and now last and be present in the now, not in the tomorrows or the yesterdays, but in the here and now. That's, I think, what many of us come to realize. And we step much more out of judgment. We step much more out of being inauthentic. I think we become much more authentic and much more real, who we're supposed to be. Before this NDE, I think I was really obsessed with quite superficial things. I think, social media crap, that's just, all of that in the end became irrelevant to me. It was much more about connecting with people who are heart-centered, who are open, who are aware, who I can discuss things with, like astrophysicists. I'd love to have conversations with people like that, people that understand the holographic understandings of this realm. All these things start to become much, much more interesting and inspirational and more the truth, I suppose.
So how do you again? How did your what was your journey like from having this NDE to creating soul frequency art?
Well, it started with me after the NDE. I needed to heal. I needed to heal from the trauma and realizing that, okay, I wasn't going to have children in this world. And, it's a big programming on our earth that we're supposed to have a child, a house, a mortgage, a car, and all that stuff, have families, have big families. And I was very much geared towards that understanding. And when you finally let go of the programming and realize that each and every one of us can decide what we want to have, really. And we're not all supposed to have big families, even though that's beautiful, but not all of us are come here for that. And I think that was partly why I started to paint. I wanted to paint out my emotions and my feelings, and it helped me heal a lot. I started painting the colors that I saw in the other realms, because the colors that I saw in the other realms, they weren't like the monotonous colors that you see here. There were endless blues and endless greens and oranges and yellows and reds and purples and violets and indigos, and it was just incredible, the colors. So I wanted to bring those colors out on my canvas. I was fed up of seeing morbid, dark art, that they call art. I believe art is colorful and joyous and full of inspiration, and it touches people. It brings out something happy in people. I don't see why black, morbid art can do that to a person. Yes, it could probably bring out your sadness, but art is about inspiring people, isn't it? It's about uniting each other and bringing out the joy. So that's what I started to do with my painting. And I also realized I started to get really, really psychic after my NDE. I was psychic before, but nothing like I experienced after the NDE. I was able to go into a random shop where they would sell Greek memorabilia, you know, one of those touristic shops in Greece. They have them everywhere in the world. And I went in with my husband and I said, you know what? There's something Moroccan in here. And my husband said, no, it's a Greek shop. We're in a Greek mirror. And then this little voice behind the counter said, I'm Moroccan. So the little guy behind the counter was Moroccan, and I could tune into his frequency. And I started to be able to tune into people's frequency. I could feel people. I could sense their inner turmoils, their lives, their paths in a way. I could just sense who they were inside, the core of their being. And that's when I decided to create soul frequency paintings. It just came from that. So it's pretty miraculous, actually, if I think about it, that I used to just paint, and then from painting it became using my intuition and connecting to different people. And when I also create these soul frequency paintings, I also write a letter, because this letter tells you about what these symbols are that I paint in the different soul frequency paintings. Every single soul frequency painting is unique. There's not one the same, because we're all uniquely different. And I get these symbols when I tune into, let's say, a person, and I see these symbols that come and these colors that come, and I paint them down. And it's very spontaneous. I can't think about it. If I start thinking about it, I can't do it. And at the moment, I've got to do clients, but I'm not ready to tune into them yet. I really need to be in a space where I'm sitting outside in my olive grove. I have the paints around me. The sun is shining on me for electromagnetic energy to increase the psychism within me. And then I can start to transmute the word of God, source, universal, love in Christ, into me. And then I can start to connect and bring out those symbols and colors for each person that I paint for. So these soul frequency paintings are something I really love.
Let's stick on this subject for a second, because I want to know, first of all, when people have near-death experiences, they often say a lot of what they see and experience they can't put into words when they come back. And I wonder if you have the same difficulty with the vibrancy of colors and trying to put what you see on canvas.
I think the colors are endless. No artist in this realm will ever be able to paint the colors they see, but we can try. We can try and use the symbols we see and the colors we see to the point of using as many different shades as we can. So that's what I try and incorporate in my art. That's why it's really, really luminous. I have a painting here on the side, which will, do you want me to show you or not?
Yes. We're going to put some of your art up, but I would like to see.
Okay.
Yeah, would like to see.
So this is one piece. It's so intricate and it goes into such small detail. I don't know if you can see that. And these are very spontaneous pieces.
Yes.
Yeah, very spontaneous pieces. They just come through me, and I just paint. I just paint. And I love also the feeling of them, because I paint with structure, and it has, like, if you put your hand over the painting, it has bubbles. I need to feel art as well. It's not just about painting. I need to feel it. I'm a very tactile person, so so everything, I try my best with what I can feel and see from the other worlds. It's really, I don't know if any of you have ever taken hallucinogenics, but it's, we won't say yes or no, but we can imagine, can't we? We can imagine what we see and what we've heard from other people, that it's very much like that. And that's what we're trying to incorporate in the art when we're painting. When I'm painting, I try and incorporate that, because that's exactly what I see there. Endless colors, endless depth, endless emotion, not just color gives you emotion when you're there. It's not when you look at color in this realm, yes, it's beautiful, but it gives you solid emotion when you're there. You can feel color, and you can feel the different frequencies of different colors, what they mean. It's an instant knowing what those frequencies mean to you. You know it immediately once you're there. So it's almost like you're a holographic imprint of knowing once you're there. You know everything because you're unity consciousness. You're connected to everything and everyone. Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up too, because my first thought in on your website, when you look at the art that's there, it is very visually interesting. And as you said, it's the texture is interesting as well. But the first thing I could relate the style of your art to is psychedelic experiences and what people describe. Do you think that there's what do you think the reason is for that? And you don't seem to shy away from that. Do you feel like there's correlation to what people are seeing there?
Yes, I think that, look, my understanding is that this is the dream realm, that we are in the dream realm here, even though it feels so real to us and so monotonous every day. We go about our lives, we go to work, we have relationships, we eat food, you know, it seems really, really real, but this is actually the dream world. And where we go to is an awakening. It's suddenly we awaken into, wow, I was just on a really long holiday. It wasn't that great, but I was on a holiday, and I've just really awoken here to understand that this is the real world. This is where I am part of everything, and I am just a universal loving frequency that's able to do whatever I want, filled with joy there. You know, it's only positivity that's there. There is no heaviness. There is no negativity, fear, anger, judgment, guilt. Those, they don't exist because the frequency is so high and so potently full of love that nothing can transcend that. It's just love. Um, and that's something that really makes a lot of people very emotional because, you know, when you go there and you come back, it's difficult. Yeah. Sorry. It's difficult because you want to stay there. But then you realize how important your life is when you have to come back. Because the reason why you come back is because you haven't finished what you're supposed to do here. And I understand now what I have to do here. It's exactly what I'm doing right now, is transmuting the word of universal love and awakening people into their potency, who they really are, is following their calling, whatever that is. Follow your calling and help each other in these times. Don't be self to self because you're closing yourself off to universal love. Open yourself up and be as giving and loving and caring and helpful to other people. You know, we're in a realm that is governed by false idols and agendas and movies and news, and all of that is really, really there to weaken us and to make us, to give us amnesia. Actually, it's to give us amnesia and to follow an agenda that they have in store for us. But what we need to do is to awaken to our full potential. We are nothing to do with that. We've come here to create literally heaven on earth. And that's really my message here today, is to remind everybody, we are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the ones that are here now to create heaven on earth, no matter what comes our way, no matter what comes in front of us now, you know, and there will be a lot that will be coming in front of us, but we mustn't fear it. We must all be like warriors, without guns, without knives, but with our hearts, as Christ came here, not to worship him, but to give unconditional love and tell people to become as he was, a loving, universally beautiful, loving being. Yeah. I know.
What about your
There's a lot. I
your
know.
yes, yes. Um, yeah, I find that difficult sometimes because there's so many things that we can dive into, but this is almost, for you, this is your purpose, right? So I
Well,
don't
there
want
can
to
be many purposes.
step on that,
I don't think
or
that we have one purpose. I think that there's lots of different roads we're going to take and that we can create and give in life. It doesn't have to just be one thing, you know. It can be many things, but just to put love into those things, that's the most important thing. However many roads we want to take, we must put love into that and be our most authentic selves. That is the most important thing we can do in this realm.
how does your process work? From Do people come to you and say, I'd like you to put this into a piece of art? Um, are you compelled by certain stories? How do you begin the creative process for your work?
Look, there are so many amazing creative artists out there, far better than myself. But I've never been somebody to copy anybody. I've always been somebody that's really followed my own intuition. Um, so my art really is when I'm alone in nature and I just create. That's how I create my art. I don't look at copying this person or trying to do it like that. I've actually rebelled against that. A lot of people said, "Oh, why don't you learn to paint like this person or that person?" And it kind of triggers me because I don't want to do that and I don't want to be that person. I am an original frequency that's come into this vessel to create my own creation, and that's what I do. So with my art, everything is very original. And it's interesting, some people have said to me, you know what, it's really interesting, your art's a little bit like the Aboriginal people. And because I work with dots, I never even knew about dots, that they did dots, because I wasn't really looking at art back then. And I started to paint with dots. And then when somebody said that to me, of course I was interested and started looking at that. And it's not the same as my painting, but I can see similarities. And it's also really interesting that they also say that this realm, this earthly realm, is the dream realm. So that's another correlation that I'm like, wow, maybe I had a past life as an Aboriginal, or maybe I'm in tune with their frequency, or I don't know. I couldn't tell you. But I do know that when I create something, it just comes from connecting to God and letting that frequency energy flow through me and create. And there are days where I don't feel it and I don't want to paint. And then there are days where I just, you know, put on my slacks, go out in nature, bring the paints with me, my cup of tea, and then I just start to create. And I'm always, sometimes I'm like judging. This is interesting. This awareness came to me the other day. I was painting, and then I was judging the painting, thinking this is not good enough. And then I realized instantaneously my awareness brought me to myself. Oh my God, I've always felt that about myself. I've never felt I was good enough. And so that in turn immediately healed that. Wow. It's so when you paint, you're getting answers through the divine into yourself and realizing, okay, let go of that. It doesn't serve me anymore. It doesn't have to be perfect, because what is perfection? It's an illusion. It doesn't exist. Everything is always perfect. And so then I started to carry on painting. This was only a couple of weeks ago that this happened, this awareness. So I've always been somebody that's been very hard on myself. I've always, never thought I was pretty enough or whatever, intelligent enough. But slowly, slowly, like an onion that peels away, and as you get older, you start to awaken into a new sense of being, um, and understand that that's all an illusion. It's not real. It's the program, and we have to step out of the program and follow our own.
When you feel the days that you are more inspired, or you do feel in tune, can you walk down the street and you see someone the way you described the man being Moroccan? can you see someone and see an aura or a
Yes.
combination of colors? Where does the
Yes. I mean, I'm living
yes?
in the
Okay.
most beautiful town here now, and how I got here is quite an incredible story. We started getting severe earthquakes in Greece on the island of Paros. It never happened before. I'd been living there for 12 years, and instantaneously I said, "We need to move inland immediately." And it's such a knowing that it was hard because my husband didn't, he's very stubborn. So, and he had his windsurfing life there, he had his the holiday life that you feel every day in Paros. But luckily enough, because it got worse and worse, I said, let's go. And we ended up, finding a beautiful area inland in Greece. And it's interesting. I've never experienced this before, but in this town, there are about 50, 60,000 people, and everybody is so heart-centered. I, I sometimes think I'm in a different timeline or a different dimension, because wherever I go, I'm buying honey and they give me 2 free pots of honey. I go and get veggies and they give me 3 bags of extra veggies. I've never experienced this before in my life. And everywhere I go, people are sharing stories and helping each other, and they're growing organic foods, and they're, it's almost like living in a small communion, but you're not. You're living in a city. You're living outside in a city, in the nature where I live. So, for anybody listening out there, if they get a calling where they need to move, they need to follow that calling no matter what, even if it's fearful, and even if they think they can't do it or can't afford it. There'll always be a way. The doors will open and you'll get help. You'll get a way to move from wherever you need to. And so, I didn't have the money to move, but somehow things just fell in place. And now when I'm here, when I see people on the streets, I can sense a lot about these people and feel a lot about their auras and how their lives are. And sometimes, to be honest, I don't want to tune in too much because it's overwhelming. I don't want to pry into people's personal lives. It's not something that I want to do, only if they allow me, of course. So I'm very careful with what I do. I never, go without asking, unless somebody wants to know more about themselves and needs help, or guidance. But I just want to say I'm certainly not a guru, not at all. So yeah, I just have to check my battery because I hope my computer's not going to die, because that would be awful. Okay, I just realized that my computer's not plugged in. Sorry, let me just do that. That would be so awful, wouldn't it? Oh God. This is going so
Yeah.
well.
Worse things have happened. So I think it,
Really like
but I
what?
appreciate you being on
Tell
top
me.
of it.
Okay, right. Yes. So yeah, so if somebody wants to come to me and
Um,
ask me about their lives, then yeah, I can do that. But in hindsight, everybody can do it themselves. If they silence themselves, switch their phones off, get away from their stupid news propaganda and the stupid movies that they watch monotonously every night. Instead of doing that, go outside and watch the stars. Connect with our heavens, connect with the water above us. Yeah, connect with the waters above us and around us. Because water is like a hard disk of the universe, and it retains all memory, all knowledge that has ever been eternally. And so, yeah, people need to do that much more. They need to go out in nature and connect, get out of their apartments, get out of their houses, of course, in a safe environment with friends or whatever, but connect more in nature. That's really, really important. My dog,
right as
yeah,
you said that, I
the
saw.
dog,
Yeah.
she's incredible, actually. She's completely blind. And when we came here, it takes her always a few days. We live in a huge area here. We have like 4 or 5 acres of garden. And she takes her time, but she knows every single area of this house. She's only lived here for three months, but she's completely blind, but she knows everywhere. She's so intelligent. We underestimate animals so much, so much. Animals are actually so much more intelligent than we are. If we could speak their language, we'd be so amazed what they've got to tell us. Really.
And that's another common. We haven't had an episode where we focused on that, but it is a common theme of a lot of people's near-death experiences that they encounter, deceased pets that they've had and animals that they've had
Yeah.
close relationships with. Um, do you think? I mean, when we spoke with Alyssa Conger, she described not so much being psychic, but she said, similar to what you said, that this intuition, she can kind of coach people to have better grasp of their intuition. Um, One, do you agree with that? Is that something that you do, or do you focus primarily on the soul frequency art right
Look,
now?
I always find it very difficult when people start to tell other people that they can, you know, give them future predictions and guidance, because every single one of us can do that ourselves. I think those type of people tend to take the power away from others. We need to understand that we have all of that inner power within ourselves. We can do everything ourselves. Sometimes it takes another person just to ignite that flame. And that's what I do. I'm here to ignite that flame. I'm not a guru, and I'm not here to take your power away. I'm just here to ignite you to remember who you truly are and who you've always been. And that's what I'm doing with these soul frequencies. It's almost like igniting them to realize who they really are again, and giving them that inspiration that you can do that too. Just follow your inspiration. I have had quite a few emails telling me, situations, horrific situations that they're in, people that have no money, that are broke, that are living in poverty, divorces, and all kinds of scenarios. And, you know, how do they get out of that? Well, my answer would be by being the best version of yourself. Eventually you will get out of those situations. If you become a broken person by these events, then you won't be helping anyone, especially not yourself. You will just break in the chaos of those experiences. The point is to master those experiences and go through them with a warrior type of mentality and an open heart, and understand that all of this is for learning, for you to become a potent superhero in this realm, and to bring that with you wherever that takes you, to create a wonderful, abundant life.
I think that's a good answer. It's so good. I'm going to move on. Actually, are there pieces of art that you've worked on that were particularly um, impactful to you personally? And I mean, if so, can you describe any of
Look,
those?
what really impacted on me regarding art was the downloads I received after swimming in water after my NDE. Um, I was able to get information that I saw, um, that started coming through me from God, not from myself, from God. We're vessels at the end of the day. We're just frequency vessels attaining information. And I started writing a book called Terra Infinita, Downloads from the Ether. And all of my stories that started coming through me, I started wildly writing down every night over a period of a few months. And that eventually became a short book that I published, which is on my website, which, basically foretells the times that we're living in now and going right up to 2027, 2030, 2040, and 2045. Now, the interesting thing is, one of those stories that I downloaded in 2021 actually came true. And it was a story that was downloaded about these geometric shapes of plasma that people will begin to see in our realm, that will just kind of float through the sky and appear. And about 2 months ago, I read a story about that. And I was like, I don't believe it. I wrote about this. This is exactly the vision I had, what I saw about these plasma geometric shapes that are kind of wafting through the air, and they're here to imprint this realm with awareness and frequency and so much more that we don't even understand. Okay. And this is one of the stories in my books that I wrote. So that was a real nice confirmation to see that. I remember I saw a TikTok video of this guy who filmed that, and I was like, wow, that's my story. So yeah, so that if you call that art, that was part of my book, my art that I create as a writer that I downloaded. So yeah, that certainly was something that inspired me. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, you definitely did. Well, I wasn't aware of your book either. Um, what? So, what
So
did you
my
say
book
your
is
book is
called
called?
Terra Infinita, Downloads from the Ether. And that's where I get all of my information, from the ether. We all do. We all do.
Okay, and it's
Yes,
on your
it is.
website
We
as
all do.
well.
If we are, the more we connect to nature, the more we are taking our shoes off. That's very important. So the electromagnetic energy from the earth comes through us like it does with the trees. You know, the trees used to be the ancient internet. That's why they cut all the big trees down. We used to have trees that were bigger than you can ever imagine. In fact, I think you have one that's in America that's now apparently a mountain, but they don't say that it was a tree, an ancient tree. It's like, it's a famous one. I can't remember what it's called. Yosemite? Yosemite.
Yep, it's.
Yeah, it's cut off like that.
Or you think of Yos.
Yeah,
Yep, it's a
right.
national
Well,
park.
that's a tree.
Do you know what that? Do you know what that's called?
What?
The that the formation that looks like a tree stump. What is that? Yeah. Oh, you're not as fast as.
I think it's called
um.
Yosemite, or something like that.
Yeah.
And these trees, I write about these trees and what they are, and why they've been taken down, why they were taken down back then. And if anything, what we should be doing, we should be planting trees. We should be planting seeds. All of us should be planting seeds here while we're on Earth. Seeds, any kind of seeds, trees, plants, everything like that. We should be planting. Even if we live in cities, we can just eat an
Is it,
apple and drop the apple seed somewhere in the earth and say, and you will become an apple tree, and then just get rid of the seed in the earth.
are you talking about the Devil's
Yes,
Tower? Have you seen that
yes,
that
exactly.
formation?
Those are
Yeah,
ancient.
it's like
That's right.
that
Yeah,
one.
those are ancient trees. Yeah, they're ancient trees. And so in my book, I write a lot of different downloads that I got. And a lot of us have got these ancient memories still within our DNA. But because of the poisoning that's happening on our earth in food, water, and air, we are unable to retain this information because our pineal gland is so calcified. And unfortunately, we can see it in dreams when we sleep at night, but then we don't remember them, which is also unfortunate. But some of us remember our dreams as well. So the dream world, where we go to when we become unconscious in this world, it's called sleep in this world, but actually it's becoming unconscious and going into the other realms. That's where we're going. Um, and that's where we pick up a lot of informations, and that's where we do a lot of healing. We get a lot of insight into our lives and other people's lives, and sometimes we also meet people we have no clue about but think we know them forever. And we have all kinds of interesting, strange, horrible dreams, but they're all here to, if we're able to analyze our dreams and interpret them, it will give us power and knowledge and wisdom. Yeah.
Do you see yourself continuing to do this kind of work? Do you think that maybe your work evolves? Obviously, it would evolve over time, but where do you see yourself in 10 years with the type of work that you do?
Look, it's happened very recently that this is like kicked off with my interviews, because you know I'm a very normal human being. I'm just like you. I'm just like everyone else watching. But what what changed me really was the understanding that our lives are so short, that we're here for such a short time, that we really need to make the most of our lives, and that has nothing to do with making a lot of money, okay, or becoming famous. What it has to do, and has everything to do with, is being there for one another, inspiring people, getting the best out of others. And that's what I believe now that I'm here to do, is to ignite the flame within each person, and to for them to find their own power so that they too can ignite others around them. And we will be like torches, ancient on the ancient hills, lighting the torches around the world, so that we are all finally lit, and like a fiery fury, we will all awaken together and create heaven on earth.
It's profound, but it's a
It's a
lofty,
lofty
lofty
goal,
goal.
yes. Because we're so programmed. That's why. Because we are so much in our left brain thinking. I opened up a YouTube channel recently called Infinite Canvas, the Artist's Voice, where I talk all about the left brain and the right brain, and how we've been programmed into the left brain of thinking in this realm. And even the buildings are created with the left brain way, which is square and ugly, and we live in ugly apartments, and the shapes of our buildings are all square. Well, they're all square for a reason. The geometric shapes have everything to do about the expansion of consciousness or not. And when you live in a square shaped building, it certainly doesn't open up your consciousness. And funnily enough, because I trust the house that I live in, not because I knew about this at all, but because I somehow managed to take a photograph of my roof. And the roof has a geometric shape of a flower of life. And so where we are has everything to do with the expansion of consciousness. So something has shifted. Also, I want people to look more at the signs around them, because they're everywhere. I have a cherry tree outside my house that's just started to have bright red cherries. Everything is a symbol, a deeper symbol, for a deeper awareness, for us to understand and find out. Everything is a sign. Even the bird that flies into your balcony is telling you something, or whatever, or the old man that falls over right in front of you that you don't bother picking up because you're too busy going to work. Everything is a sign for you to awaken in your heart, but you need to know how to read that sign, how to interpret that sign. The interpretation is the difficult part, because a lot of people interpret things in not the right way. But I think the more you connect to your heart and the expanse of your heart, the more the interpretation will align with your authenticity.
Well, we're running a little short on time. Um, I really
No, I love
appreciate you
you.
doing this, and just taking a little time, because it really is, what's so fascinating to me about everybody that has a near death experience. It tends to impact them, and it
Mm,
impacts them in different ways. But what you have brought back in terms of how you express the experience to the world is really fascinating. Um, I think we'll have listeners and viewers that probably want to um, take a look at your work and your website. So, can you tell people where they can find you and where they can learn more
sure.
about you?
They can find more about me on my website, NicoleMeeuws.com. And on that website, I have a lot of different areas that they can have a look at. Um, my books, my soul frequency art, my paintings. But I also have recently started my first book on my biography, on my life experiences, because they've been a little bit unusual. And I think they will relate to a lot of people out there, because I've experienced so much of everything that I understand so many different types of people. It's a gift that it's been given to me, these experiences, instead of going to university. So my first book of my biography has come out. Same soul, different passport, it's called. And I will be releasing shortly my second and my third book about my biography. So it's basically a book about the early 90s and my experiences in the 90s, and who I met, what I met, the craziness that I met then, and what I experienced.
Definitely
Yes.
relatable, and your story too. It's a little different subject, but going back to where you wanted to. be a nun, right? And then you made this move was literally clicking in
Have
me. I've had
you?
similar experiences, and I've heard similar experiences. Yeah, I actually was a seminary dropout. That's one of my backgrounds, and then I've been in healthcare as well. So when you were talking about um, your husband and his experiences, I was thinking, yes, I've actually seen that. I've seen people wake up and say, you know, I lost my family in this other in this
Mm,
other world, and
yeah,
just different things. Um, but near death experiences that I've seen, I remember, and I've told the story, many times on this show, but um, meeting someone who was talking about, floating above their body and seeing their surgery and the people around them and what was happening in the waiting room. And, I would walk out of the room and say, I don't know what's going on there. They've had some type of hallucination, until I started
yeah,
reading more. Right. And then that really created my interest for the show, just because I don't have all the answers. Right. You said we try to have the answers with the
yeah.
left brain, and I think we often do, but there's so much
Oh,
more out there.
absolutely. When
So,
is your birthday? When is
um,
your
yeah,
birthday? Are you a Taurus?
it's, I'm a
Okay,
Libra.
Libra,
Am I a
yes.
Libra?
Okay, so harmony. Harmony is very important to you. Very interesting, yeah.
That's a
Yes.
fact.
But
Yes.
you know,
If
astrology is a
harmony,
very difficult one because a lot of people call that work the work of the devil, especially the religious Christians. It's the work of the devil. But ancient astrology has always been there. It's thousands and thousands of years old, especially Babylonian astrology. It's 5,000 years older than the astrology that that we know that you're a Libra and I'm an Aries. But actually, in Babylonian astrology, you're not a Libra and I'm not an Aries. I'm actually a triple Pisces, and that aligns much more with me. The fluidity of being a fish, and being very psychic and attracted to water because I'm deeply attracted to water. But at the same time, I need trees. I need to be around green, lush trees. I couldn't live without trees. I love trees, forests, and things like that. Yeah.
yeah, me too. Like, you would see this area
I,
behind me is full of
it
just
looks
full-grown
amazing
growth. It's
out there.
beautiful. But
Is that a tree that has that moss hanging? In Florida, they have that beautiful kind of, is that the tree that hangs from moss? I love that. Oh,
it is. Yes, you see it in
yes,
South Carolina
those are
as well.
magical
Those kind of,
trees, by the way.
I wonder
They're
what they call
magical
them.
trees, those trees. I mean, you're so lucky to have those trees. You should speak to them more. I saw, I saw this really interesting video. It was a woman who stood next to a tree and she started speaking to the tree. And there was no wind. It was just, the tree was there. The branch was a little bit further than her face. It wasn't touching her, it was quite far away. And she said, Tree, I want you to touch my face. Please touch my face. And then the wind started coming. Just keep on touching my face. Keep on touching my face. And the branch started going, keep on touching my face. Come on, tree. I love you. Just touch my face. Please just say hello. Touch my face. And then the tree touched her face and then went back again. And then another woman saw that video, made another video because she thought it was fake. And it did the exact same thing. So I'm saying we need to speak more to trees. We need to speak to
Hmm.
nature because it's listening. The same like water. Water listens. The Japanese scientist Emoto spoke to water and did experiments on water and saw how love and hate changed the geometric shapes of water underneath a microscope. The water that had love in it, the geometric shape was beautiful and expanded and just incredible shape. And the one with fear and hate on it was completely distorted and broken under a microscope. So we need to speak to water. We need to empower our realm with positivity, with loving frequency to the water, especially to our nature, especially. We need to program this realm because after all, this is a highly advanced simulation that we're living in. We're just the code.
Well, I was going to say, if a Libra is focus on harmony, creating anxiety. I'm the perfect example of okay.
Are you?
But yeah, thank you so much.
Wonderful.